Ready for another deep dive? We're cracking open emotional intelligence this time. Fascinating stuff. And, from the excerpts you sent over, you're really honing in on how much our emotions shape our lives. Should be interesting to unpack.
Absolutely. This book is packed with insights. Where should we begin?
Well, one thing that immediately grabbed me was that story about the New York City bus driver. Remember, stuck in traffic, things could gone south quickly, but instead his, optimism totally shifted the mood of the entire bus. Makes you wonder, could we all be those kind of emotional leaders?
It's a fantastic example of emotional contagion, isn't it?
Hmm.
It's amazing how our brains are actually wired to mirror the emotions we sense in other people. Think of it like a ripple effect. Positive emotions can uplift, sure, but then negativity, that can spread like wildfire, leading to what the book called emotional hijacking, right? Those moments when...
Right, like that guy in Colorado, remember? The one who almost rear-ended someone because he was so scared during a snow flurry?
Exactly. Or Richard Roblé, the burglar, remember him? About to turn his life around, but that desperate need for his family, it pushed him to one last heist and, well, tragedy. Those stories really highlight how, especially in those intense situations, our emotions, they can easily override logic and reason. It's like this leftover instinct, from our evolutionary past. Back when quick reactions, they were vital for survival.
It's almost as if our emotional mind, it's like a supercomputer working way faster than our rational thoughts can keep up with. The book mentioned how sensory signals, they actually hit the amygdala, which is our emotional center, even before they reach the thinking part of the brain. Wild.
Exactly. It's like this high-speed alert system, prioritizing immediate action over, well, thinking things through. Crucial for our ancestors dodging saber-toothed tigers, no doubt, but these days it can lead to some, shall we say, interesting situations.
So are emotions the key to success or our downfall? I mean, if they're so strong they can override logic, where does that leave us?
That's a question emotional intelligence tackles head on. It argues that it's not just about your IQ, but about what it calls emotional intelligence. Things like self-awareness, empathy, the ability to motivate yourself. Those are just as important, if not more so, for navigating life.
It's true. Remember that study about Harvard graduates? Their IQ didn't predict their life satisfaction or success, but their emotional intelligence did? Pretty telling.
Absolutely. Or, here's a classic, the marshmallow test with those 4-year-olds
Yep.
who knew that their ability to delay gratification would be such a strong predictor of their future success.
It really makes you think, it's not just about being book smart, it's about being emotionally intelligent. Now, the book, it digs into the different components of this thing, this emotional intelligence. Could you unpack those for us a bit? What are the building blocks here?
Of course. The book breaks emotional intelligence down into 5 key parts. The first, and maybe the most important, is self-awareness. Being able to identify and understand your own emotions is like having your finger on the pulse of your inner world. Noticing what your body's telling you, connecting those sensations to specific feelings. Remember Gary from the book?
Right. He was the one who couldn't really explain his emotions, right? Like, he didn't have the vocabulary because he couldn't identify what he was feeling. Alexithymia, wasn't it?
Exactly. Imagine trying to navigate life without a clear understanding of your own emotional landscape. It'd be like, sailing without a rudder, totally at the mercy of the winds and currents.
So if self-awareness is the rudder, what's the engine? What actually drives us towards our goals?
That would be self-motivation. The ability to use your emotions to achieve your goals. Your inner drive, managing impulses, delaying gratification, staying optimistic, even when things get tough.
Okay, makes sense. But what about when those emotions are running high? How do we manage them effectively? There's got to be more to it than just keep calm and carry on, right?
Right. And that's where managing emotions comes in, figuring out how to handle those emotions in a healthy and, productive way, like how to self-soothe when you're upset, how to shake off negativity, how to, manage anger effectively, that sort of thing.
It's about knowing how to spot those moments when things are escalating, right?
Mm-hmm.
And having the tools to navigate them, clenched jaw, racing heart, classic signs of anger, knowing to use techniques to cool down before things blow up.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Emotional intelligence, it isn't just about us. Right? The book also talks about empathy, which is all about understanding and really sharing the feelings of others.
You mean like little Roger trying to comfort his crying friend by, rubbing his own knee? Maybe not the best strategy, but hey, his heart was in the right place. You could see that empathy shining through.
Precisely. And finally, all of these components, they come together in social skills. This is about building and maintaining healthy relationships, communicating effectively, inspiring others, collaborating, and figuring out how to handle conflict constructively.
So it's like all these components are working together, right? Like instruments in an orchestra, self-awareness is the conductor, guiding the different sections, self-motivation provides the energy, the momentum, managing emotions, that's about making sure each instrument plays in harmony. Empathy allows the orchestra to connect with the audience, understand them, and social skills. That's how we deliver that captivating performance.
Now, that is a beautiful analogy. It's not about mastering one instrument, but about bringing them all together to create a harmonious and ultimately a successful symphony of a life. Now, we've talked about how this impacts, our own personal success, but the book dives into the bigger picture too, right? The societal impact of all this.
Totally. Emotional intelligence argues that a lot of the problems we see in society today, they come from a lack of, well, this very skill. And it really pushes for us to address this need, both individually but also as a collective. The term that stuck with me was emotional illiteracy.
Yes. The book argues that a lack of emotional intelligence is like a breeding ground for so many problems we see: violence, addiction, depression. It impacts not just the individual, but it ripples out, affecting whole communities.
It makes you wonder, if we equipped people with these emotional tools early on, could we actually change those outcomes? Something to think about.
Now, that is a powerful question, and one we'll dig into more deeply as we continue this deep dive. The book does offer some really interesting potential solutions.
Right. And one of the most hopeful things this book brings up is neuroplasticity. That amazing ability our brains have to change and adapt throughout our lives. So even if we didn't have the best emotional guidance growing up, it's not too late. We can still develop those skills. That's really encouraging, actually, like a second chance for our emotional selves. And speaking of second chances, the book talks about psychotherapy, right? Like it's a form of remedial emotional education.
Exactly. Think of it like therapy being that safe space to kind of unpack your emotional baggage, to rewrite those old scripts that might not be serving you anymore. It can help you understand where those patterns come from and then, find healthier ways of coping.
It's like rewiring those emotional circuits, the ones that might be, a little fried, like that Vietnam vet in the book, the one who is still dealing with flashbacks decades later. Trauma, man, it can really leave a mark.
No doubt. Our amygdala, remember that emotional center we talked about?
Yeah.
It stores those traumatic memories with this extra intensity. It's like they get hardwired into our responses.
So how does therapy even begin to address that? It's not about erasing the memories completely, right?
Right. It's more about giving the person a safe and controlled space to process those memories. By going back to the trauma with a therapist, they can start to detach those overwhelming emotions from the actual event.
Carefully dismantling a bomb, piece by piece.
Perfect analogy. And remember, this process, it takes time. It's not a quick fix. It's a gradual rewiring. The book also talks about cognitive therapy and its role in, reshaping how we respond to things.
Yes, that whole idea that our thoughts, feelings, and actions, they're all connected. So cognitive therapy is about recognizing those automatic negative thoughts, right? The ones that can just spiral into a whole whirlwind of bad feelings.
Exactly. And it's not about pretending those negative emotions aren't there or trying to bury them. It's about learning to manage them. To look at where they come from and then choose a healthier response.
It's like we get to take back control of the narrative in our own heads, changing the story from one of self-defeat to one of, empowerment.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And just that little shift in perspective, that can be so powerful because you realize you actually have more control over your emotions than you might think.
It's amazing how much our thoughts actually shape our reality when you really think about it. But beyond individual therapy, the book also talks about those amazing community-based programs, right? Like that one in New Haven that was all about reducing violence, especially among young people.
Yes, the Resolving Conflict Creatively program.
Yeah.
A perfect example of just how powerful it can be to actually teach emotional and social skills. They focused on giving those kids the tools to manage their anger, resolve conflict without violence, and really truly empathize with each other.
And it worked, right? I mean, the book mentioned that those schools that used the program, they saw big drops in violence, way fewer disciplinary problems. It makes you think, why isn't this in every school?
A question a lot of us are asking. I think people are more aware now of how important emotional intelligence is, but actually putting it into practice, making it part of the curriculum, well, that's a whole other challenge.
It's like this weird disconnect, right? The research is clear, we see the benefits, but then our education system is still so focused on academics, test scores, those more traditional measures of achievement. It's like they forget about emotional development.
Yeah, it's a complicated issue for sure.
Mm.
But as more people realize just how much influence emotional intelligence has on, well, pretty much every aspect of our lives, I think we'll see those priorities start to shift. Hopefully sooner rather than later, right?
And this book, Emotional Intelligence, it lays out a really compelling argument for that shift. It shows us that these skills, they're not just some nice to have, they're essential. Not just for us as individuals, but for creating a society that's, I don't know, kinder, more empathetic, more in tune with itself.
Couldn't agree more. And it's not just about the future, right? It's about making our lives richer and more meaningful right now. Because these skills, they make us better partners, better parents, better friends, better colleagues, better humans.
It's like this ripple effect, isn't it? Starting with ourselves, that personal transformation, and then it just radiates outward, touching everyone around us.
Exactly. And it all comes back to understanding that we're all connected. Our own well-being emotionally, it's tied to the well-being of everyone around us. Kind of like that story in the book about Terry Dobson, that Aikido master. He disarmed a guy on a train, not with force, but with like pure compassion, pure emotional intelligence.
Powerful example of how impactful these skills can be, even in those really intense, high-pressure situations. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive: the power of emotions, all those building blocks of emotional intelligence, how our childhood experiences play in, the role of therapy, those incredible community programs. It's a lot to take in. As we start to wrap things up here, what are some key takeaways for you? What really stands out?
It's a lot to process, isn't it? For me, the biggest takeaway, it's that emotional intelligence isn't just some fluffy concept. It's not a luxury.
Okay.
It's vital, especially in the world we live in today, because it's the foundation for everything. Understanding ourselves, managing our inner world, connecting with other people, building relationships that are actually healthy. It's not easy, but it's important work.
And the good news is that we're not stuck, right? These are skills we can learn, skills we can develop and keep developing throughout our lives. It's never too late to start investing in ourselves.
Absolutely. And the payoff is huge, not just for us, but for everyone around us, our families, communities, society as a whole, you name it. It's pretty amazing when you think about it, that we have this capacity for growth within us.
It really is. So as you reflect on emotional intelligence, what's resonating most deeply with you? What's sticking with you?
That's a great question. I think what's striking me most is just how interconnected everything is. Our emotional lives, they're not happening in isolation. They're woven together with the lives of everyone around us. So every time we choose empathy, every time we act with compassion, every time we take a moment to manage our emotions in a healthy way,
Right.
it matters. It creates ripples.
Yeah.
And those ripples, they contribute to a world that's more harmonious, more compassionate.
Love that. It reminds me of that quote, be the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly. It starts with us. It starts with each of us making that commitment to learn, to grow, to develop our own emotional intelligence, one step at a time.
So true. So as we wrap up this deep dive into emotional intelligence, one last thought. What's one concrete action you plan to take, either to boost your own emotional intelligence or maybe even help someone else develop theirs?
Something to consider as we move forward.
It really is. It's more than just reading about it. It's about actually living it, right? Putting those ideas into practice in our daily lives.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's the simplest things that make the biggest difference, like just taking a moment to pause when you feel that wave of emotion hitting you, that pause, that moment of awareness. It can completely change how you respond to a situation.
Hitting the brakes on autopilot.
Yeah. It gives us that space to choose to respond in a way that's more skillful.
And that choice, making it over and over again, that's how we create lasting change, right?
It's like building a muscle. The more we use our emotional intelligence, the stronger it gets.
This deep dive has been amazing. I feel like we really got to the heart of what makes us tick, emotionally speaking. Definitely walking away feeling inspired, more empowered to approach my own emotions, and my interactions with other people with more awareness, more intention.
That's fantastic. And remember, it's a journey, right?
Right.
It's not like we reach emotional perfection one day and that's it. There'll be times we stumble, times we fall back into old habits, but that's okay. The important thing is to approach those moments with compassion, with that willingness to learn and grow.
So true. Every moment is a fresh start, a chance to practice, a chance to choose empathy, a chance to cultivate that self-awareness. It's been a pleasure diving into emotional intelligence with you today.
The pleasure's all mine. Always love getting to explore these fascinating aspects of, being human.
Well, until next time, keep exploring, keep those questions coming, and as always, keep diving deep.